Hi, everybody. Good morning from a rainy Blue Mounds. I hope everyone's doing well this morning. So today, half and half. Good to be back. We had a great time in Crestone. It feels like a long time since Scott and I have taught this class. We've had a really busy week. Scott's been doing his 2020 boot camp, which was really fun. So yeah, we went straight from Colorado into that. So yeah, it's really fun to be back doing half and half here in Blue Mounds. Let's start this morning lying on your back, and yeah, we'll just see where things go. So knees bent, feet flat on the floor, and lying on your back here. So take your hands, place them right on the lower part of your rib cage. So kind of the lower 6 ribs, and kind of palpate around. So you can feel the part of your ribs that are curved, where the rib cage separates out. You have the breastbone, and then you have that split in the rib cage. Just like palpate that bone a little bit, those bones. They call these the false ribs because they don't connect immediately into the sternum. So the ones, they all kind of connect into one bone and then into your breastbone. That's not super important, but I don't know, it's kind of interesting. So feel how those ribs all connect together and how you have this kind of open soft tissue in the middle of it. And that open soft tissue right in the middle, for a lot of us, that's where our breath goes when we start inhaling and exhaling. You almost like just go right into a little bubbling up right there, inhaling and exhaling. Now, we also go a little lower in the belly, but for many people, when you start thinking about breathing in the lower ribs, that's where things move. You might even feel that right now. Just do a little test out, and you might feel that rise and fall. And so that's kind of the simplest place to take your breath, is into that little floating up and down space, that soft tissue. Probably because a lot of us aren't that strong in our abdominals, and our abdominals aren't super tight there. But also, you don't have to move bones, right? You just have to move soft tissue. But it's kind of shallow. The diaphragm actually goes all through that whole lower false rib area from the back into the side. And so if we're getting a really good movement of the diaphragm, we're getting it moving all the way around. And we are meant to move those bones. And when we move those bones of the ribs using the diaphragm, then that changes what the lungs are like, right? It gives a little more space to the lungs, the rib cage moves around, and that gives us a really full use of the lungs, front, side, back. So now take your hands a little more sideways so you feel more of just the ribs and not that soft tissue and that split. And see what it feels like to breathe into those bones. And think of your breath going more to your back, more to your ribs. So, of course, your breath always goes in your lungs, right? That's how it's always going to work. So we often say, breathe into your side ribs or breathe into your back ribs. And what we really mean is make some movement in those side ribs and back ribs, which means that you would be engaging the diaphragm a little differently. And so when I think about breathing into that space, less movement happens in that soft tissue in the front. I can feel my back body just a little bit press into the floor. And I can feel my side ribs moving sideways. They go out as I inhale, and they come in as I exhale. Just a little bit as well. They have a slight up movement as they go out and up. They have a slight down movement towards my waist as they come in, down and in. And I'll just add one more piece of information to this, and then we'll start moving. Sometimes you'll hear Scott or I say, knit your ribs together in the front. And that is this idea, that soft tissue space. Like you could take the two rib bones and draw them towards each other. That soft tissue space feels like it gets a little smaller. So you could think of like a shoelace too. I think that's another good image to think about. Like you were threading a shoelace through all those ribs, and then you just pulled the shoelaces a little tighter and it got narrower through there. So that idea, the image of knitting the ribs together, it's like you're drawing the ribs together in that way as you exhale, as you engage your abdominals. So less breathing in this kind of front area means I can engage my abdominals more. Engaging my abdominals more means I need to make more movement in these side and back ribs. So let's play with that. So start with your hands behind your head and your elbows lifted like we often do. And when my hands go behind my head, I find it harder to breathe into my back ribs. I have to pay more attention to that. It's not that I can't do it. I just have to think about it more. And the sensation is different. It feels a little less than when my hands are by my side. Now, as you exhale, knit your ribs together. And then bring your head up. And once your head is up, do a full breath cycle. As you exhale, knit your ribs together. Bring your head 1/4 of an inch higher. And then think of leaving your ribs knit together as you come down. Now the shoelace might get a little looser, but you're not totally letting it go. Couple of those. Exhale. Ribs knit together, head comes up. Inhale through the back ribs. Exhale, knits your ribs together, which brings your head a tiny bit higher. And you keep the shoelace mostly tied as you come down. And as you do this a few times, more and more, hopefully you start to feel the muscles that knit your ribs together working a little harder each time. This time as we go up, we're going to let that lead us into the 100. Second exhale, arms reach forward, legs float up, and we start the pumps. Inhale, 5. Exhale. So just continue that same imagery. Breathe through the back ribs, the side ribs. Exhale, feel the ribs knit together a little more. Inhale, ribs out and up. Exhale, ribs down and in. If you feel you need to rest your head, you can, and you can still practice that breathing with your head down and the arms pumping, still really knitting the ribs together. A lot of work. Two more. and then coming back down. I mean, you know, I get a lot of work, a lot of burning through this, even after 25 years. I really feel those muscles coming on. So I consider that a good thing. Seems really helpful for breathing in, for some postural stuff to get these muscles a little stronger. So we can do the same thing as we do the roll up. And let's do today feet hip distance apart, feet flex, knees bent, so not too wide there. Slide your pelvis a little forward so you're behind your sitting bones. Take hold of the backs of your legs and rock a little backwards. So I want to feel that my arms are doing the majority of work in this moment. So it could be that my hips are trying to do a lot of work. I'm going to try to get that to let go. I'm not even working my belly right now very much in this moment. I'm actually really feeling like my biceps working to hold me. So see if you can get that feeling. Elbows wide and a little bit bent. Now I'm going to slowly add in that knitting the ribs feeling. So a little bit of low belly support to start. So now my arms and my low belly are working. I'm going to practice that breathing again. Inhale out and up in the side ribs. Exhale, ribs knit together. Inhale, open up the back ribs. This is a great position to practice opening up your back ribs. Now, as I go down, I'm going to keep working my arms a pretty good amount. The lower I get, the more I'm going to need my ribs knitting together. So right now I don't need them that much, but I'm going to slowly walk down. I'm going to really use my arm each time I go. And even though I'm using my arm, the lower I get, the more potential for those ribs, those upper abdominal muscles to come on. So once I hit my kind of end point, I'm going to stay here and breathe. Knit the ribs together. Okay, now my chest let go a little bit. My upper abdominals are doing more. I'm going to use my hands and come back up. So let's try a couple like that. Even if you normally do it without your hands, it's always an interesting practice to do it with your hands. So walking down, find your, halfway down, could be 3/4 of the way down, not so far that you're really resting on the mat, but you still use your arms. You can practice that upper abdominal connection. One more time. Closing the soft tissue space in the front. Now, you can hold it here just like this and breathe. You want a little more challenge? One arm reaches forward. Hold yourself from your ribs. Either switching the arms or two arms. Now, as you come up, make it come from here. Knit the ribs together. Bend right over that spot. And you're back up. It's a lot. Let's do the whole thing again. Start with the hands. Walking down. Stay here for a moment. Find your breath, knitting the ribs in. And then just keep holding on if you want. That is great if that's how you're working. If letting go goes into your neck, stay holding on. But if you want, either alternating one hand then the other, or both hands for a breath or two. Breathe through your back ribs on the inhale. Exhale. Knit the ribs together to come up. Really bending through that. Okay, so we're going to do a little free form now. You can keep walking your hands. You can play with the hands forward. We're going to roll down and up, maybe halfway down, maybe all the way down. Your roll up, whatever that is. We're going to do a couple of those. Inhaling. Exhale each time the ribs knit together. If you come all the way down, just take your arms up to the ceiling. Inhale, open the back ribs. Exhale, knit the ribs together. Tie the shoelace in the front and keep tying it as you work your way up. Inhale, brings your head up. Exhale, draws the shoelace a little tighter. One more. And up to the top. Okay, so let's work with that same idea in the single leg circles. So you're going to lie on your back with the legs straight out. Now, every so often, people have a lot of tension in their hip in the single leg circles, and I don't often talk about this, but it's absolutely fine for you to have the other knee bent and the foot on the floor. Sometimes that makes it easier in your hips. If that happens to you a lot, try it this way. You'll probably have a smaller leg circle if you do that, and that's just fine too, but that might be something that helps this hip. If you do okay with it, you want to keep that leg straight out. That's how I often do it and how I often show it. So you can choose either position. Set up your leg towards the ceiling. I have my left leg up today, trying to give the left leg some front row time. And then that same thing, like my ribs are popped up, but that space is really open there. I'm gonna draw it together. And as I do that, I wanna make sure I don't tighten my neck at the same time. Like, what's the balance there? Hands come by your side. Now you're gonna go across your body and then circle around and back up. Ribs keep knitting together the whole time. Inhale as you go across. Exhale, knit the ribs. Inhale, open up the back ribs. Exhale, ribs knit together. Even though you're moving your leg, right? You do have to think about that. We could make it an exercise about your breath and ribs. Let's take the reverse, opening first. Ribs knit together in the front. Inhale, open. Exhale, knit the ribs around and up. One more. And then that leg goes down. Okay, so second side, leg comes in, reaching up towards the ceiling again. Take a moment with your hands on your legs and find that rib position for yourself. What's that like? Does it make your neck tighten up? Sometimes it does, but can you then just relax that? Hands come away. You go across the leg. So whatever leg's down, that's the direction you go first, reaching across, around it up. Inhale, exhale, ribs knitting together. One more. And then in reverse. Inhale, a little bit open, not very far. Exhale, knit the ribs. Two more. And then that leg comes down, and you can use that to come up to sitting. Okay, so let's play with the same idea in rolling like a ball, similar to how we worked with that in roll up. And I think feeling this rib connection right here is really, really helpful in rolling like a ball. So when I don't have the rib connection in the front here, this part of my spine tends to flatten out. Once this flattens out, it's really hard to roll back and forth. I need to be round. So as I knit my ribs together in the front, I make more space in the back. I can send my inhale into that, tie the shoelace in the front on my exhale. So find your position, ankles, knees, or backs of the legs. If rolling like a ball is kind of hard for you, then backs of the legs is a good way to do it. So here we go, find your balance. Do 3 breaths just holding the balance, just to get yourself finding those feelings. Back ribs open, ribs knit together on your exhale. Elbows a little wide. Now don't change the breath as you roll. Still breathe into your back ribs when you roll. Knit them together. Feel how you come up. Hopefully that happened. When you get it really knitting together in the front, sometimes it surprises you. And you just, whoop, you just come up, which is pretty cool. Two more. And then resting. Okay, so last one I want to do is the side kicks. Side kicks I always like to do because there's not a lot of other exercises we have that get into those muscles. And those muscles are really, really helpful for integrating just kind of a whole body feeling in the posture. So once you're on your side, right, there's a tendency for the side you're lying on, for that rib to kind of collapse into the floor. So because we've changed our relationship with gravity, knitting the ribs together is a little different. It's not just both sides coming in the same amount. The top rib doesn't have to think that much. It drops really easily. The bottom rib needs a little extra pull, right? The shoelace is like too short on that side, so we have to pull it a little more or something like that. I don't know. My mom used to always get mad at me for not untying and tying my shoes, so it's ironic that I'm making all these shoelace references. And I still am very bad at tying and untying my shoes. I just take my shoes off with them tied. So, but today I'm going to tie my ribs. So we're going to take the bottom rib. We're going to pull that lace a little more. And you might even feel it float a tiny bit off the floor. Now, it doesn't mean my shoulder and my armpit comes off the floor. It's just the lower rib. It's very specific in that lower part of the rib cage. It might mean my waist comes off the floor. Probably will mean my waist comes off the floor a little. See if you can feel that underneath oblique working. And once you've found that position, now we're going to think a little more about both sides. We've got that shoelace working better. Now, as I go forward and back, both ribs, drawing it. Inhale forward, exhale, both ribs. Again, the more I do that, the more I have to double check with my neck. Sometimes my neck tries to help with this. Can I isolate breath and ribs, not neck and chest? A little more challenge. Take your top hand, put it behind your head. It becomes less stable. You have to think a little more. Be a little more nuanced in how you work. One more. Legs coming together. Press up to sitting. Take the other side. Okay, so underneath rib, I'm gonna strap that up a little more. So I'm gonna think of that rib lifting up, just the rib, not the armpit, just the lower rib. A little bit the waist. Once I get that lower rib up, now I think a little more about both. Heavy head, relaxed neck. Inhale forward. Exhale, ribs draw in. Maybe you want to try hand comes behind your head. I know for me, this side is harder than the other side. I was showing off on the other side, but now I have to think more. So if it doesn't quite work for you, just keep that hand down. It's fine. Inhale forward. Exhale. One more. And then legs together and come up to sitting. Okay, so let's do a little roll up to standing. So over onto your hands and feet, stretching forward. And as you hang your body forward, then go ahead and bend your knees. Now, some of you might have already had your knees bent, but if you are someone who likes to straighten your legs here, do it with your knees bent today. And feel how you can really relax your chest down towards your thighs, and that's going to open up the back ribs a little more. It's going to make those front ribs be a little softer and more together. And then in this position, breathe into the back ribs again. It might be harder to get a big breath. I know my breath gets smaller in this position. That's okay. Just direct the breath that you have to your back ribs. And then letting the head hang a little more. And then sinking your pelvis, bend your knees a little more. Start to unroll your spine. And all the way up to standing. So my producer is also your teacher. So he's about to come in, hand off the production duties.
There's a darn good chance I'm not in the frame right now. So if you can imagine that above the screen, there's a head that's talking head. So I love that image of the shoelace. And that was revolutionary in my body. You know, I had been doing all my breathing right in through here, and my back hurt all the time. I kept trying to open my upper chest, and it just sort of stubbornly would never open up. And it wasn't until I integrated that image of drawing the ribs together. And I generally use the term knit the ribs, but boy, I love that image of the shoelace. So let's take a big, deep inhale now. Then with the exhale, cinch up your shoelace. And then hold it there as you inhale. Exhale, reinvigorate your shoelace. And maybe you're already feeling how that breathing opens up the whole rib cage. Not just the upper part of the ribs where so many people tend to be tense, but also that space right between the shoulder blades. Just out of curiosity, how many of you have tension between your shoulder blades? Okay, one of the best remedies is to cinch your shoelace. So really love that methodical approach, shoelace, how you looked at it in the side leg series, how you looked at it at the roll up. So now let's put it into variation of yoga sun salutation. So to begin, exhale, knit. Keep your knitting, inhale, open your ribs. Exhale, reinvigorate the shoelace as you take your arms up. This will help open your ribs even more. Then with the inhale, folding, just like you did previously. We'll take a few breaths here, letting the weight of your head hang. Now with the next exhale, reach the crown of your head forward. Then with the inhale, folding. Exhale, snug your shoelace as you rise up. Inhale, arms down. Same thing a little bit faster. Now, next cue is very often overdone. So that we're talking a fraction of an inch. You know, if you think about like an eighth of an inch, that's not very much, is it? Invite awareness to your pelvic crests, anterior superior iliac surfaces. And an eighth of an inch lifts them up toward the ceiling. So now we have two cues to work with. Lifting your pelvic crest ever so slightly. Cinching your shoelace. See if you can maintain both those two together for a few deep breaths. All right, so now we're going to turn our attention to opening up the fronts of the hips. To begin psoas walk, take your left foot, step it just a little bit back. Look down to make sure that both your feet point forward. Once you're sure that they do, then bring your gaze up, hands on your hips. Now remember those two cues, different than two scoops of raisins. Pelvic crest lift, shoelace. Then maintaining that connection, we're going to initiate the forthcoming movement from the left heel. Inhale, it lifts to press you forward. Exhale, it descends to draw you back. And this is the walk part of psoas walk. Couple more. Now, next time your back heel is lifted, pausing there. And then bring your hands into prayer position. Now, the forthcoming movement, two things tend to happen. Lower ribs tend to puff forward. Keep your shoelace snug, that's the remedy. Pelvis tends to tip forward. Lifting your pelvic crest is the remedy. So maintaining those two, as you reach your left heel back and down, as you telescope your whole left leg out of your torso. Heel goes back and down, back and down, back and down, till it makes contact. So now that there's a little bit more length in the front of your hip, check in with pelvic crest lifting, snugging up your shoelace. Then reach your arms forward. I often joke with our dear sweet cat Ruthie, that she needs a hug. I walk toward her like this. She runs the other direction. So full deep inhale into your back. Snuggen your shoelace as you reach your arms and track your hands with your gaze. 3 breaths here. And bring your hands down and stepping that back foot forward. So if you take a medicine, do you take as much of the medicine as possible? No, that would probably be harmful, wouldn't it? So same with stretching. Very often we push the stretch until the absolute limit, which would be like taking cupfuls of medicine. Dose is important. So now, so let's walk, take your right foot back. Take a peek down, make sure both feet point straight ahead. Once you can see they both point straight ahead, bring your hands to your hips. Inhale, right heel lifts to propel you forward. Exhale, it descends to draw you back. So as we go forward and back, synced with the breathing. So what was that whole little digression about dose? Most of us, our hip flexors, hold a lot of tension, stress. And if we come in with a huge dose stretch, the muscle clenches down more. So you may not feel a big stretch in the front of your hip. That's perfectly okay. The right dose often has more benefit. So next time that back heel lifted, pausing there. Keeping that back heel lifted, cinch your shoelace. Keeping your ribs knit. Lift your pelvic crest. And right heel reaches back and down. Telescoping now your right leg out of your torso. Opening the front of your hip, whether or not you feel a deep, intense stretch. Oftentimes, modest stretch, more benefit. Reach your arms in front, just like you did in the roll-up. And keeping ribs knit, pelvic crest lifted as you sweep your arms up. Gaze follows along. 3 breaths. Bring your hands down. And stepping your back foot forward. Slight bend in your knees will facilitate feeling your feet on the floor. And take a moment to see if you can feel your right heel, left heel, right foot ball of the foot, left foot ball of the foot, 10 toes. So with that sense of rootedness, lightly lift your pelvic crest up. Knit your ribs. Lift up through the crown of your head. Open up your chest. 3 breaths here. Exhale, arms to the side up. Inhale, arms to the side fold. Exhale, gorilla. With the inhale, stepping your feet back to yoga pose, dog pose. And we'll take a few breaths here. And then with the exhale, coming down. So in seated, bring your feet forward in front of you. And please keep in mind on the mirror image of you. Then bring your left leg in, foot flat on the floor. And then if it feels good, copacetic in your hip socket, bring that left foot up and over. Now, if that creates a pinching in your groin, that's your hip socket saying, don't do that. That's rarely, if ever, a tight muscle. That pinch in the groin are your bones talking to you. So whether your foot is across or adjacent, take your two sitting bones and root them down to lift up through the crown of your head. Now, I know a lot of people love the pigeon pose, but what we're doing right here is a far safer way to create a little more space in the hip. Notice how that left hip tends to lighten, if not even lift up. Reach that sitting bone out of your neck, out of your rib cage to press it down. Almost like there's just a little bit more weight in that left sitting bone. And keeping that rootedness, groundedness in your left sitting bone. Bring your right arm across, could be hand catching knee or elbow touching knee. Left hand goes back. To the left, turning your head, neck, shoulders and ribs. Deep breathing. And turning back toward the middle. And then taking both feet back forward again. Now the other side, bring your right leg in. That's going to be appropriate for many of us, if not most of us. Or if you'd like, you could come up and over. So again, that pinching in the groin, that's almost never tight muscles, good stretch. That's almost always indicative bone against bone, which long term can be injurious. So whether your foot's over or adjacent, take both sitting bones, anchor them down. Use that rootedness to create liftedness, if liftedness is really a word. And perhaps overcompensating, exaggerating, grounding your right sitting bone. So now left arm comes across, either hand on knee or elbow, turning to your right, head, neck, shoulders, chest. 3 deep breaths. And turning back toward the middle. Now, to take that twist and connect it into what you did earlier, specifically in the side leg series, remember when you were on your side? There's actually a lot of overlap between that exercise and the spinal twist. So to begin, bring your left leg in, placing foot where appropriate, either adjacent or cross. Bring both hands to catch that knee. rooting down through both sitting bones. Left one just as much as the right. Now remember that image of cinching one shoelace a little bit more? So your left lower ribs cinching dynamically toward your belly as you twist to your left. Now maybe you don't twist as far. And maybe you're thinking to yourself, wait a minute, he must mean the other ribs because this is restricting my freedom to twist. That's exactly the point. Not because I don't want you to twist as far. But you're going to get a lot more benefit if you shift the twist into your upper back. So the direction that you're turning towards, toward your left. Taking those left lower ribs. With the exhale, cinch them toward midline. Keep that cinch as you breathe, as you twist. And exhale back toward the middle. Both feet forward. Now right foot comes in, adjacent or cross. So now it's going to be those right ribs, a little bit exaggerated, moving toward the midline. Both sitting bones rooted, left side, right side. And keeping those both the case as you twist to your right. Right ribs, all the while, keep moving in opposition to your twist. Maybe you can feel it in your ribs, in your upper back. So the art is to not just move from the place of least resistance. To move from the place that may be sticky or stuck. Just like that old adage, to work so that your weaknesses become strengths. And exhale, turning back toward the middle. Both feet forward. Inhale into your back. Exhale, cinch your shoelace as you take the arms up. Inhale, folding forward. Hips flex, spine flexes. Deep breaths. And with the exhale coming up. Now we're going to end with a little bit of deep breathing work, yoga breathing exercises. So I'm sitting on the floor. I think most people will prefer sitting in a chair, or at least sitting up on a blanket or a cushion. So now I'd like to address one of the most pernicious myths that we find in breathing. That myth being that diaphragmatic breathing is the same as belly breathing. You don't have to do belly breathing to have all the good benefits of diaphragmatic breathing. So continuing the thread, thinking of shoelaces as a thread, with this exhale, cinch up your shoelaces. and keep them cinched. Now, there are going to be those people that say, oh, no, wait a minute. That's chest breathing, that's bad. Invite awareness to your midsection where your diaphragm is. And with the inhale, descend your diaphragm down. And with the exhale, let it rise up. Ribs stay knit the whole time as your diaphragm descends with your inhale. Ascends with your exhale. Deep diaphragmatic breathing. So what we find is that diaphragmatic breathing can occur even when there's tone in the belly. Diaphragmatic breathing can occur along with rib breathing. And bring those two together is even better than bringing chocolate and peanut butter together. Because you get the profound benefit of calming through diaphragmatic breathing and energizing through rib breathing. So imagine if throughout your day you had plenty of energy, but rather than feeling anxious or jittery, you felt a depth of calm. So let's do a few more of those breaths together to help find that balance between the two, calming and energizing. Shoelace stays snug as your diaphragm descends with the in-breath, ascends with the out-breath. Ribs expand with the in-breath. Release back with the out-breath. One more deep diaphragmatic rib cage breath. And resting on your back. This is a point that I think is so important regardless of what the activity may be, is to take at least a few moments and relax. To let the workout integrate, specifically at the depth of your nervous system. So quite often after a long bike ride out here in the hills, first thing I'll do is come inside. Generally, I lie beneath the ceiling fan. And I take a few minutes to relax. Jaw and neck. Shoulders and arms. Belly. And legs, especially after a bike ride or a run, relaxing the muscles that we're working. We'll spend a few moments here quietly. Then, if you've closed your eyes, opening your eyes. Rolling to your side, and then coming up. So, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Take a few moments here for any comments or questions that may come in. Just to announce, we're doing the webinar again next week. Great. So next week, Colette and I are going to do another webinar immediately following this class at 10:15 a.m. And it's a great place to bring any comments or questions that you may have. And one of the things I like the most about it is that it's a chance for us to come together, that we may be scattered here, there, and everywhere, some of us watching synchronously, some of us watching the videos asynchronously. And these webinars are a chance for us to come together and connect as a community and to ask any questions that you may have, and also to hear what are other people thinking about. So that's 1 week from today at 10:15 Central Daylight Time. Great. So we did have a question. When we do a mini roll-up, I tend to maybe overlift my head until my chin goes into the neck between my shoulder collarbones. Too much? Should the chin just float slightly up? Yeah, so the question is about the roll up, and the person was observing that their chin ends up really close to their chest. It sounds like it feels kind of pinched in the throat. And the second part of the question was dead on, is that, yeah, we're looking to create neck flexion. So the head does come up a little bit, but the way I like to cue it is to think in terms of keeping length in the neck, both the front and the back, and coming up. And maybe I don't bring the chin as close in, but keeping that sense of a lengthening as you come up. So it's what I like to call win-win alignment. That if there's anything that you do that opens one place by shutting down and constricting another place, that's generally not the indicated direction to go. So anytime you open one place, keep the other place open, a sense of lengthening. Great question. That's it. Well, thank you so much. And please keep eyes open. We have great programming planned for the fall going into the winter. We're going to expand our class offerings, especially for those of you who are subscribers. We're going to have a lot more for you each week in the coming few weeks. We're going to roll out our new schedule early September. Thanks so much for joining us, and let's do this again soon.